All right.
Yes, I'm ready.
All right, cool. So again, the purpose of this workshop, it's really a workshop, not necessarily a presentation. We're going to walk you through thinking through how to prepare your ECR one-page project summary. I'm Dr. Ronnie Ellington, and I'm a professor of math education at Morgan State University. And I'm also one of the co-PIs for the ECR Hub, the newly funded, well, it doesn't feel new. As of October, we formed this hub, and we've been working diligently to provide experiences that really do support our current and prospective grantees in the ECR program. So that's me. Welcome. And I'll let Danielle introduce herself.
And so I'm Danielle Ferguson. I'm the co-PI of the ECR Hub. So my main role on this project is to co-lead activities on broadening participation in the ECR program and cross-hub collaborations. So I'm happy to be here with you all today to help you craft your one-page project summary for the ECR program.
All right. So the purpose of this session is to work with prospective ECR grantees to identify, one, if you have an idea that can align with the EDU programs, and discuss how to craft your one-page summary in a way that's aligned with the objectives of the ECR program. So the driving questions are, how do you tailor your project idea to fit into the ECR portfolio? Understand how your project fits in the program portfolio, and then how do you frame a project summary page that articulates your project overview, the intellectual merit, and broader impacts of your work. So we're going to be actually working with you, all of you who signed up, submitted your kind of idea where you think you want to play. And so we're going to take those ideas and help you really flesh them out so that you have something you can share with program officers. And then at some point around 4:30, we will actually have program officers come to hear your ideas and give you some feedback on how to think about those emerging projects. Danielle shared with me earlier that some people have reached out and said, oh, I don't have this all worked out. That is totally okay. Part of this work is for you to think through the elements of the project summary so you can have something a little more robust than you may have now. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Some of these names are familiar to me. So I said, welcome, thank you. So this webinar is in 3 parts. So the first one is developing your idea. The second part is specifically crafting your one-page ECR project summary. And then part 3 is engaging NSF program officers to refine and forward your idea. So please have a pencil and paper or a computer to the side, because you're literally going to be writing. This is not a listening activity, it is a working session. So just make sure you have a place to jot down your ideas, because you will be sharing your ideas not only with the program officers near the end, but also with your colleagues as we move through. And as people, so right now we're at 32 people. Wow, thank you. Thank y'all for coming. All right, so I'll turn it over to Dr. Ferguson, who will talk more about the ECR Hub and give you some context that will drive our work.
All right, thank you. So before we get started, sorry, we're crafting your one page. I'll provide a brief overview of the ECR Hub. So the Directorate for STEM Education, also known as the EDU Directorate, funds research focused on improving STEM education at all levels and all educational settings. This directorate is made up of 4 divisions, each of which consists of a number of different programs. So EDU Core Research, or ECR, is one of the cross-cutting programs that is funded under the EDU Directorate, and the program that we will specifically focus on today. So you can find more information about about EDU and other NSF directorates and programs at the link that's posted in the chat. The ECR program is one of the largest STEM education programs and funds projects focused on fundamental research. So Dr. Ellington will provide more information about what is meant by fundamental research later in this workshop. Projects funded through the ECR program represent a broad range of disciplines, educational levels, and you can see different publications out of the ECR program, and we'll talk more just about that later today as well. So specifically, the ECR Hub, which is leading the workshop today, has been funded to accomplish two goals. The first goal is to extend the influence and reach of existing ECR projects, and the second is to build career development opportunities, especially for underrepresented institutions and scholars. Our hub focuses on accomplishing these goals for three target audiences. So current ECR grantees, prospective grantees, and other EDU stakeholders. Today, we are focusing on helping prospective grantees, such as many of you, understand how to align your research ideas with goals of the ECR program, craft your one-page project summary, and get initial feedback from NSF program officers, all in an effort to increase your awareness and capacity to submit an ECR proposal. I'll pass it on to Dr. Ellington to get us started in the first part of the workshop. But if you have any questions during the workshop, please put it in the chat and we'll try to answer them before the end of the event.
Okay, so now the first part is critical. We're going to spend a lot of time here. So all of you submitted an idea. And as you know, as all of us are researchers, we know that an idea is the genesis of a research project, but it's not a research project. So we all have great ideas. One of the things that makes us scholars is that we got great ideas. So the question is, how do we take that idea and create it into a viable project? Next slide, please. So first we have to understand there's many different programs in NSF, and what makes this ECR specific and unique is that it focuses on fundamental research. So I would like people in the chat to just record what is your emerging understanding of what fundamental research is? When you hear the word fundamental research, what is it that comes to you? Okay. So I'm gonna just look at what people write. So when you say fundamental research, I'm curious to see what you already believe about what that is and what it means. Okay, so I see people saying basic rather than applied, building blocks for future capacity. Yep. Provides a foundation. Okay, got it. Okay, all of these are good ideas. Theory questions. So theoretical, that is key. So while fundamental research may have implications for policy and practice, foundational research really does not have to generate findings that you can apply in practical spaces. It's not intervention research where you're trying to find the impact of an intervention on student outcomes. It really is the kind of research that helps us understand constructs and theories in more expansive ways. Okay, and for the ECR core research areas, we have three areas that you can focus on. Research area 1 is research on STEM learning and learning environments. Research area 2 is research on broadening participation in STEM. And research area 3 is research on STEM workforce development. So in this workshop, I'm not going to go deep into these areas. I'm going to give you kind of an overview. But if you want to get a little bit more depth, there are webinars that NSF does around these three areas. And I just strongly recommend that you look at those webinars, read the solicitation, because right now I'm gonna give you kind of an overview, and then you're gonna work through your own idea to see where it best fits. Okay, next slide. So right now I'm just gonna give you a slight overview. So when I think about fundamental research, okay, fundamental research is grounded in theoretical or empirical frameworks that inform research questions. So it may identify and explore new constructs. So in certain areas, there are certain constructs that don't exist, or you might want to explore how we can define things differently in STEM education. That's what we consider identify and explore new constructs. Or we can extend our understanding of current constructs. So for example, one of the primary areas in broadening participation is this notion of sense of belonging. Right, so you might have a study that expands our understanding of what sense of belonging means in certain contexts, how it impacts student learning, building out this construct of belonging in new and extended ways. increase our understanding of relationships among constructs. So I go back to my idea of sense of belonging. How may sense of belonging and agency play out in the experiences of Black students at HBCUs, for example? Notice how we have constructs that we understand, but we're now exploring them in new ways under new relationships. And then extend research or evaluation methodologies. So there may be current methodologies that we use, but now you want to extend or refine those methodologies. All of these are what we consider foundational research. Next slide. So I'm going to give an example, and I want to see what y'all say. So I'm fleshing out an idea. Again, it's not all fleshed out, but I'm fleshing out an idea around this notion. And each of you are going to kind of take your idea and create what I call a 25 words or less research idea. So my research will explore how identity, agency, and institutional context influence the academic achievement, persistence, and career choice of first-generation, high-achieving African-American math majors who study at HBCUs. So that's what I'm interested in studying. Now, let me ask you a question. Can you see how what I'm exploring is fundamental research and it's not applied? So I would love to see in the chat, this is my idea. Why do you see this as fundamental or not? What about it is foundational research? And then, am I exploring new constructs, extending understanding of existing constructs, increasing understanding of existing constructs, or extending a methodology? Which one would you say this, just by reading this 25 word or less idea, where do you see it fitting? One, is it fundamental research? And two, which one of these does it do? So I want to see what y'all, how y'all answer that in the chat. Three, okay. Understanding existing, yep. Within specific, okay. Right, so the constructs here are this notion of identity, agency, and context. So I have a whole idea that HBCUs as a particular context fosters certain types of agency and identity in Black students, specifically math majors, that I believe can be modeled in a particular way to understand the role of institutional context and identity and agency. So I have a whole background of why I want to look specifically at math majors, because I believe math majors are unique from other STEM majors because of the nature of mathematics, right? I have a whole background as to why I believe we should understand that. And I believe that identity, agency, and institutional context interplay for these students to actually make them high achievers and persist in their career. So this study will actually help me understand that, build a model around that, and you'll see my research questions as I'm developing them. Okay, so what I would like y'all to do, so that's my example. So now I want to move to taking your idea and creating a 25 word or less descriptor of what you want to do, and then define where do you think it fits. Is it creating new constructs, exploring the relationships between existing constructs, extending our understanding of constructs, or methodological approaches? Okay, so you're going to do that in pairs. Next slide. All right, so so now that you're going to think about your idea and how it explores a construct, etc., what I just described. Now we want to talk about, well, where do you think your work fits? Okay, so we got three main research areas that are the focus of ECR. So there's research on STEM learning environments, there's broadening participation, and there's research on STEM workforce development. So these are the three major areas that ECR fundamental research exists. Okay, next slide. So let's start with the first one. So let me slow down, get some water. I'm talking fast because I'm trying to stay on schedule. Okay, So foundational research project that advance general explanatory knowledge and understanding about STEM teaching and learning, and in many environments and contexts in which teaching takes place. So think about this as studies focused specifically on STEM teaching and learning. It can be from the individual level with students. You can look at classroom context. You can look at across any context, but the focus is on learning, how students and teachers are learning STEM. Studies may inform or draw upon research from multiple disciplines that study learning at different levels, including the learner, the teacher, the learning environment, etc. So again, the key here is fundamental projects looking at constructs, understanding how STEM teaching and learning takes place in various contexts, and how to improve on that and how to think about that. All right, let's move to the next one. So
Dr. Ellington, you're muted.
what happened? Okay, so in this area, we're looking at fundamental research that investigate issues related to broadening participation in STEM education and STEM workforce. So it focuses on individuals or organizational factors that positively or negatively impact individuals from diverse groups in STEM. And of course, there's this definition of reverse groups, but again, it's not necessarily about applied research on how to create an intervention for these groups or to implement some intervention. It's really about foundational information or foundational research on broadening participation. What can we learn about these populations that help us broaden participation? Next slide. And then the third category is STEM workforce development. And this is about strengthening, our explanatory knowledge and understanding about STEM workforce participation, skill building approaches, workplace knowledge and competencies, learning in workplace contexts, and critical shifts in STEM workforce fields. So unlike research area 1 that focused in learning environments, this is focused on STEM workforce development. So we're looking for basic questions concerning how to best prepare a STEM workforce that is ready to capitalize on the latest advances in technology and science, as well as tackle current and future social and economic challenges. So these are the 3 areas of focus in the ECR program. Next slide. All right, so now, you have 2 things that you're going to do in your think, pair, share. So for your research idea, you're going to create the short elevator pitch, which is that 25 words or less, that tells me what your work is. And then you're going to justify why it fits in either box 1, which is STEM learning environments, box 2, which is broadening participation, or box 3, which is workforce development. So in your groups, you're going to do 2 things. You're going to write out this little elevator speech. You're going to share it with your person. And then you're going to say, this project fits here because it focuses on blah, 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 blah. Okay. So any questions about what you guys are going to do? So you're going to take what you've just learned about fundamental research, what the focus is, similar to what I did, and then you're going to identify where your work would be positioned. All right. Okay. Next slide. All right. So, go back. I don't want to show my example yet. Okay. So can we do the breakout rooms now, the pair shares now? So yes. We're going to randomly assign you to a partner and you have 10 minutes to complete this activity. Creating that one paragraph, telling us if it's going to create new constructs. Is it about extending our understanding in existing constructs, expand our understanding, or methodological? Okay. And then where does it fit? 1, 2, or 3? All right. Any questions? Can we stop sharing for a minute? Is there any questions before we put you in breakout rooms? So is everybody clear what they're being asked to do? I'm looking in the chat now. Somebody said it's not fundamental, foundational. It is fun. One of the things it explores is how to identify influence of career choice. Okay. Yeah, I'm still working out the idea, but it is foundational because I'm looking at constructs in different contexts. And I'm also trying to explore how institutional context, identity, and agency work together to forward these high achieving students' persistent success and career choice. So it literally is a basic research study. And then I'm going to develop a model based on what I get from the students and the institutional context stuff and build a model of the relationship between those variables. So to me, that's foundational research. Any questions before we move you in your groups? All right. Are y'all okay? All right. We're going to open up the rooms. You're invited to go into your room, share your idea, where it fits, why you think it's foundational research, fundamental research, and it will come back in 10 minutes.
I think I'm more of
The inside. Oh yeah, thank you for that. So this is just my example of why I believe this work is relevant and why I believe it's a broadening participation idea, because through understanding how institutional context develops identity, helps support identity development and agency, what I'm hoping to do is build a model on how these things interact that can then be used to just understand more about how we can broaden participation, particularly in mathematics, looking at high achievers, not students who struggle. So my assumption, I have a whole lot of philosophical assumptions built under there around these constructs and what I believe is the connection. And then I will test those out and build out a model in the research that I conduct. So that's my example. Again, it's not perfect, but this is kind of the direction I'm headed. And what I would love to hear from you is what were your ideas and how was the think pair shared? And did you have any questions about your idea from two perspectives? One, do you see how we can fit in the fundamental research category? Because you're looking at constructs, not in something else. You're looking at extending understandings. And then where do you see your work fitting? So any questions around those two pieces? We're not at the how yet, because that's going to be kind of the research design, but any comments or questions that came out of your think, pair, share? No. Was this helpful in talking to someone? Do you have a comment and just sharing it with someone else that helped open something up around your idea? Remember, this is more interactive than just me telling you stuff, whatever. So I really want to hear some feedback in terms of, is it clear what fits in this program and what doesn't fit? Did anybody have any questions about whether they saw their stuff fitting in?
Hi, Dr. Ellington. My name is Nada Reyes. I'm at AIR. And I guess I'm still a little unsure if my idea fits in this basic fundamental research category, or more of if it is too applied. So I want to, my partner, which is a Hispanic serving institution, we want to further understand how near peer mentors can support underrepresented students in STEM to allow them to have a greater sense of belonging to STEM, a greater sense of belonging to their university, and retain underrepresented scientists in the STEM careers. So persistence in the major, retention in the field, graduation, et cetera. So there's a few different sort of outcomes we're interested in. And there's a group of students that have near peer mentors, and we think we can find a group of similar students that don't have near peer mentors. So if we wanted to compare those two students, is that too applied to be, to fall into this category?
So you're, woo, okay, so you're talking more in the methodological approach, right? So we're going to talk about the research question. So is the research question based in the understanding, or is the research question looking at the outcomes?
Well, we have several research
Right. So
questions, and
if it's more about the outcomes of peer mentoring, notice how that moves you into applied space. Where if it's understanding the relationship between the constructs of whatever MSI context and mentoring, right? You see how that's more foundational stuff, that because if you go into outcomes, you're moving into the applied space.
Okay. Yeah, I understand. That's really helpful. I think my initial idea for this particular solicitation would have been to explore kind of similar to your idea, like exploring like what makes near peer mentoring powerful. What can we come out of this research with a model or a theory or understanding, like a deeper and richer understanding of how these mentors make a difference in these students' trajectories.
Right. And so the fundamental point is to develop understanding of what the construct of peer mentoring and the things that you believe it's associated, and then seeing what we can understand about that connection, not looking at the outcomes of peer mentoring on something. Or we had this conversation over the break. So if you do an empirical study, like if you do some kind of intervention, right? You say, okay, we got peer mentors, we got people without peer mentors, people with peer mentors, and then you just look at their outcomes. That's not foundational, because I don't have any extended understanding of the construct or what it means to be a peer mentor. What are some elements of that? The tenets of that. I really, as a fundamental research project, I want to understand the constructs more, not necessarily the outcome of an intervention called peer mentoring. You see the difference?
Yes.
Yeah. So Dave and I was having this discussion. You can have a study that has an intervention component, but the point of the research is not looking at the outcomes of the intervention. It's using the interventions to understand the constructs deeper, or extend an understanding of the relationship between institutional context, MSI students, and mentoring, and what those things, how they actually interact, and the relationship between those that help us understand more about the role of peer mentoring in understanding success. You see, it's different. You can still do an intervention, but the point is not looking at the outcomes of the intervention. It's about understanding the constructs are embedded. Yes, exactly.
Okay. That's
and
helpful.
It's not cut and dry as I'm trying to say it. And like I was telling him, I work with doctoral students all the time. Some are doing theoretical work, some are doing more practice work, and it is a slippery slope, right? These, research, particularly in social science, it can get slippery, right? But the idea for this program is that we are developing a deeper understanding of constructs that we believe impact STEM learning, broadening to participation, or workforce development. That's the key. And we're going to get to the methodology in a minute. Okay, somebody said a nudge. I got to wrap this up. Okay, so questions done. All right, let's move on to the next piece. So now we're talking about the how. So now that you have determined that you have a potential area of focus that you believe is actually fundamental research or foundational research, now we have some notion of where it's situated, if it's broadening participation, STEM learning environments, or workforce development. Now let's talk about the how. How do you plan to execute this? What's the research questions, et cetera, et cetera. So you want to write this down. Proposes well-focused fundamental research questions or testable hypotheses that reflect current state of knowledge and theory. So you need a question that gets at a theoretical, testable understanding of something, not the result of some outcome based on an intervention or something like that. That's the key thing. The question has to extend our understanding of some constructs, not tell us whether this was better than that, or this worked and this didn't. That would be outside the scope of ECR. Uses methods to answer the questions or test the hypotheses. So the how you go about answering that question has to be methodologically sound. Then you need some description of measures, instruments, and procedures that you're going to use to understand this phenomena and to answer these questions. And then the fifth piece or the fourth piece is this transformative and how does it contribute to the field research, okay? So when you're thinking about your how, you want to think about what the question is and whether or not it reflects fundamental research. What are the methods that are aligned with that? What are some instruments and measures and procedures? Again, just for this workshop, you just want to kind of jot these things down. They don't have to be well formed today, but these are the things you want to think about. And then how is the idea transformative? Next slide. So here's my research question. How does mathematics, identity, and agency influence first-generation high-achieving African-American majors' success in career choice? What might an asset-based model look like that explains how institutional context informs the development of positive identity of student agency? So it's literally trying to, how do they describe this? And then what from their descriptions can I build a model that explains this institutional context, positive identity, and student agency? Now, again, this is not the best question because I'm fleshing it out, but that's really where I'm thinking from. And so I'm going to speak to 30 African-American math majors from 12 HBCUs. Using a phenomenological qualitative research design with a grounded theory approach, because I'm literally building a model based on their results. I'm going to do focus groups and survey instruments. And I'm also, what I don't have here, I just thought about it. If I'm bringing in institutional context, I'm going to have to do some analysis of documents around the various institutional contexts to see how what they say and the institutional elements play out. So trying to build that model. So I didn't put this here because I've been thinking it through, but I would have to literally have an approach that allows me to look at institutional context through documents, through maybe interviews with key players in the mathematics department, how they think about the work they do, and so on and so forth. Again, this is just me working it through. And so I would do some qualitative and quantitative data analysis strategies and develop this descriptive model that defines the relationship between context, math, identity, agency on these student outcomes. So again, this is just this is something I would give to NSF. It's not well fleshed out, but at least it's enough for someone to kind of understand what I'm trying to do and give me feedback on whether or not this is a sound approach and if these questions really do fit in the fundamental research component. That's why I'm doing it. Not to get it perfect, but get people to understand where I'm coming from so that they can give me some feedback, which I know David probably has feedback already. But even as you read this, and I know some of you have feedback, and again, I used an example that I'm fleshing out because I want you to know that you don't have to have it all figured out in the beginning. You just want to have enough of a background, enough of a question so people understand kind of where you're situating your work. Okay, any questions about my example or my how, what my initial question is going to be? No questions? Y'all not tearing it up? And if you do, it's totally fine.
Can you talk a little bit about can you talk a little bit about the quantitative analysis you plan to do?
So because I'm bringing in institutional context, what I may do, again, I haven't fleshed it all out. I wanted to be open to some quantitative measures that get at things around the culture, like there are climate surveys that maybe I can bring in to look at institutional context. I may do some surveying of students in these HBCUs that get at their experiences around agency. I may get an instrument that focuses on agency and identity. I don't know yet because I'm still fleshing it out, but I'm leaving it open because I realize that the qualitative work may be central, but these quantitative elements will help me in building this model and this relationship. So finding instruments that look at agency and identity, and then the institutional climate surveys, and looking at the math department in deep ways. So I'm just giving myself room to be able to explore that institutional context, student identity, and agency from multiple perspectives.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Okay. Oh God, I'm behind already. Okay, next slide. Okay, so now somebody says skip the, okay, go to the next one. Woo. So now we're ready. So one, I want y'all to think about the how for your project. I don't know if what's this? You may want to shorten the time. Y'all got me in these streets looking at this thing. But anyway, so now what we want to do is take the idea that you fleshed out, write out similarly what you saw me do is what is the kind of question right? What is it that you want to do? How do you want to do it? And then we're going to just speak a little bit about intellectual merit and broader impacts, because again, we want to give you opportunity to flesh your idea out with NSF program officers. So let's move on. Let's go to the next one. All right, so in the overview, you want to identify knowledge gaps. Like in my example, I talked about the knowledge gaps of not looking at institutional context as it relates to high achievement for Black students, specifically math majors. And I make a whole case for why I'm looking at math majors specifically and not STEM majors, because a lot of times they throw math in with STEM. And I make a whole argument that being a math major is very different than being a science major. And so then the goals and objectives, they stem from the research question that I'm asking. The rationale, again, HBCUs have been very instrumental in producing large proportions of African Americans in STEM and specifically in math. Many of the students who get doctorates in math who are African American hail from HBCUs, and I make this whole case that we should explore how HBCUs are fostering these positive identities and agencies of Black students. And then why I think it's unique and creative, I don't know yet. I'm still working on it. I think it's a great idea, but it may need some work to make it fully transformative. But I think it's transformative because one, we haven't looked at it in a particular way, particularly from an assets-based approach. And the idea that we talking to the students who are high achieving and not those who are struggling, and looking at those ways that we can forward that understanding to other institutional contexts. So that's my initial focus, but that last one I'm still kind of working through. So as you think about your idea, what's the gap you think you're going to fill? What's the aim and the objective and the question? What's the rationale? Again, you should be able to articulate, even if you got to put it in your phone and just say it to yourself and write it down, but you got to have some rationale for why you think this is an idea worth investigating, and then some methodological approaches, and then some idea of why it's creative. So again, yeah. Next slide. And then here's my example again. Again, I'm doing this through surveys, interviews, and documents. These stories of success from HBCUs are critically needed in the research. This insight will help us build this model that promotes success. So this model that I'm looking to develop is an asset-based model that draws on the experiences of highly successful students in HBCU contexts that have been proven to be high producers of math majors. So again, this is my example, but you want to be able to write up something similar. Again, it's not perfect, but it gives the NSF program officers insight into what it is I'm trying to do, and then giving me feedback on how to best do it, or say, no, it doesn't fit, or you might want to think about this. So again, this isn't, and I purposely picked something that I didn't perfect so that I can take it to somebody so they can actually help me refine it. So any questions here about how to craft this idea? Just you're going to craft something that's similar to this. This is what I want y'all to spend some time crafting in the next. Joni, what? Okay, I'm behind. Okay, I'm trying to read the thing. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm trying to read over here and stay focused. Any questions so far of what it is we want you to do in your, I want them to go in the groups, and we can do that, say 5 minutes for them to talk to each other, and then we can just come back, and then we can wrap it up to a little bit around broader impacts and intellectual merit, and then they'll go into the groups with the program officer. That's how I'm going to pick it up, because I do want people to talk out this piece so that they can have some idea of where they're going, and then we'll just come back. So 5 minutes, we're going to put you in pairs. It is now 4:23. We're going to come back at 4:28. Because I do want, yeah.
I'm sorry, Dr. Ellington. We can't go back to the breakout groups because I reorganized them already.
Okay, no problem.
But take 5 minutes to work independently on it. And then we will come back for broader impacts, and then you'll have an opportunity to talk with a program officer. So we'll give you about 5 minutes to work on
write
this
out.
piece. Mhm.
All right, sorry about that. I didn't know that. Okay. Woo, okay.
I think I'm at a point where I can dare to run my idea by someone and get some thoughts and be open to constructive feedback.
Great, thank you. And that's the point. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for that. Anybody else? Anybody feels that, I mean, you'll still work it out, but that's, at least you have something. You kind of can talk about why you think it fits in. You can talk about the constructs you want to kind of extend or refine. You kind of see why it could fit in this program, ECR, and you kind of have an idea of the question you want to ask. Again, these are things that you're going to continue to develop, but you at least have to have thought through this before you can even talk about intellectual merit and broader impacts. So let's move into that in the next maybe 2 or 3 minutes. I'm going to just do a real quick discussion of the 2 criteria. And again, you can look up NSF websites. You can go online. There are many different webinars that just talk about what we mean by intellectual merit and broader impacts. The biggest thing here is that for this program, the intellectual merit and the broader impacts are related to foundational fundamental research, not, so just make sure that they focus on that. But anyway, so advance our understanding within the field and advance our societal outcomes. Next slide. So here are some things to consider. Again, this can be found on NSF. I'm just going to do a quick run through. Is the plan sound? And again, right now you may not know that because you don't have a real plan. But is the plan sound? Is it well reasoned and well organized? How qualified are the individuals or team to do the work? And then are there adequate resources available? So these are just some considerations as you flesh this idea out to say that it has intellectual merit. Next slide. So what you're going to do is, I feel like it's going to contribute to the field, how it's going to advance the field, how it's going to contribute to the ECR research area. So for me, this broadening participation, and then explain why you think it's transformative. So literally, I think this is going to contribute to the field because it's going to increase our understanding of models of success, particularly the relationship between institutional context and how certain institutional variables impact identity and agency of Black students. That's what I think is going to contribute. And specifically in math, because math is unique. And so I talk about the uniqueness of math and what math majors need to bring. I do a whole discussion of that. And this broadening participation, understanding these successful models, specifically as it relates to these constructs, is going to help us understand how to broaden participation specifically for African Americans in mathematics and mathematical sciences. And then it's transformative. I'm still working on that part. I think it's a great idea, but I don't think it's necessarily transformative yet. I think there's some work I need to do to really make the case for its transformative nature. Next slide. So broader impacts is simply how you think this will impact the broader society, how it will advance explicitly describe how the activities will result in our advancement, dissemination. How are you going to disseminate these findings to have broad reach? And then how obtaining desired outcomes will benefit society. So again, you may not have all these today because you're just fleshing out the idea, but as you flesh out your idea for your research project, think about the merit and the impact as you're thinking about the project description. So right now you just may have a few bullets, then you write a few paragraphs. And if you literally have done everything I've said today, you have some sketch of a one-page summary, because the one-page summary includes the project overview, which we went to in detail, discussion of the intellectual merit, and some discussion of the broader impacts. Next slide. So think about the ripple. So broader impacts, when I was listening to the webinar that NSF did, they said Broader impacts for fundamental research looks a little different than applied research, but think about your project is that water drop. So you do this study, think about where the ripples are. Where does your work situate? So you're going to start in your institutional, you're going to talk to people. Like as you think about each of the ripples of your work, think about how it can have broader impacts at each ripple from the inside out. So again, depending on the nature of your study, those ripples will look different. But I thought this was a really good visual of broader impacts. Think about your work and where it's gonna trickle. Okay. So my example, the field, looking at math majors specifically, asset-based model, looking at the relationship between institutional context, identity, and agency, and how it creates high outcomes for Black students. The focus area, broadening participation. It's about literally through understanding that we can facilitate institutional factors and individual agency and I'm losing my mind. Agency and identity variables. We can intentionally start to use that model to understand how these things interact. Transformative ideas, still working on it. And the project team that I have in mind is very, very steeped in this work. When I think about benefits, I think about institutional benefits, specifically around HBCUs and leveraging the knowledge in HBCUs as institutional spaces that really are advancing positive identities and agency for Black children and students. I think that has an impact on all institutions. Looking at historically marginalized groups, again, I can make a case for why this work will help us benefit other marginalized groups in other spaces. I will actually create a dissemination plan that I believe that reaches the people that it needs to reach, institutional people, individual folks, different, scholarship communities, so on and so forth, and the field and society. So I can literally make a case based on my idea about how I believe my work will have intellectual merit and broader impacts. Okay, all right, part 3. I feel like I
can give you a break. I can give you a break, Dr. Ellington.
No, that's all right. We're on timetable. I know the NSF program officers are here. And so what we want you to do, go next slide, girl.
All right. No, that's the slide. So,
okay. So now what we're going to do in the last 25 or so minutes is we're going to put you in rooms with different program officers under different groups. And so next slide, Danielle, is this what they're supposed to bring with them?
So no, I can give the overview.
Okay,
all right,
great.
So for the next 20 minutes or so, you'll be in breakout rooms that have been pre-assigned. So based on the research idea that you sent us, we organized 4 breakout rooms, and the breakout rooms are focused on that topic. So everybody in that room should have a similar idea around, similar to the topics that you sent us in your registration. And then in each breakout room, there will be a program officer. So we want you to use this opportunity to ask questions about the ECR program. Maybe if you had questions as you were developing your one-pager today, we know you didn't have a lot of time, but hopefully you had, an opportunity to kind of think about it and, bounce some questions off of your partner initially. So, this is an opportunity for you to get more insight about that idea and general questions about the ECR program. And then we can follow up later after the meeting with, next steps and how we can continue to help you craft that. So I'm going to open the breakout room. So you'll be automatically sent to one of the 4 breakout rooms. And we'll bring you back a few minutes before closing just to thank you and follow up questions, etc. So I'm opening up the breakout rooms now.
Am I in a room? Did I see my room?
I didn't assign you yet. I'm about to assign you right now.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Welcome back. We were right in the middle of something good. Wow, that time went by so quickly. One, I want to just thank the NSF program officers for your time. We had a robust discussion. I think most people got a chance to share. Danielle, where are you? What is our last? I know we got, what, 3 good minutes left?
Yes. So I just wanted to also say thank you to the program officers. Thank you to you, Dr. Ellington, for facilitating this workshop for us. And thank you to all the participants. We will follow up with a number of things in your email. So of course, we'll send you an event survey, but we'll send the slides from this presentation. We'll send the recording from the presentation, and then we'll also send you some information about 2 upcoming webinars that will be actually hosted by program officers in August and in September. So August 21st and September 7th from 3 to 4 Eastern. So they'll provide more information about the ECR program. And yeah, so hopefully you have our emails now. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us and we'll definitely reach out and follow up with you. Any closing remarks? We have about 2 minutes left. Thank you. I see there's a lot of thank yous. And
you're welcome. Thank you. And again, our goal when we step back to it is really you taking that idea, crafting something that you can share. And I hope we actually delivered on that, giving you a way to think through the overview, breaking it down, being able to share it. Again, we didn't get majorly into broader impacts of intellectual merit, but as you flesh out your project idea and get the right questions and methodology, start thinking about those ripples for your broader impacts and the intellectual merit as you're designing the actual research, the whole research plan. So that's what I want to encourage you to do, that thinking as you're building out your idea.
And with that, have a great rest of the week.
Thank you. Thank you again, program. Thank you, Danielle, for your partnership and all the staff at AR and our trusted leader, David. Thank you for leading the project, and y'all have a wonderful day. You'll hear from us soon.
Thank you.